Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise broadcast, the only live local politically conservative program in Kootenai County, where we expose the political power players, politicians, and influencers. We're your hosts, Dan and Donna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. Tonight, we will be taking your phone calls. I'll give you that phone number here in a minute. Throughout the program, you can submit questions and comments right into the comments section. And if you're watching live, be sure to click the share button on whichever platform you're watching, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, or X. And on Instagram, we welcome you back again tonight. If you're listening back on our podcast, be sure to catch us live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And a reminder that the opinions expressed here tonight are ours only and not necessarily that of any of our advertisers, sponsors, and affiliates. And now here's Dan.
Good evening, my friends. A special welcome to those of you who are just joining us for the first time that have come across me, Dan Wilson, and my wife, Donna, through our various social media platforms in this big debacle in Kootenai County, Idaho, known as the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee Town Hall Protest, Civil Rights Violation, Cluster. You know the rest. We have so much to talk about tonight. This show will most likely extend past the hour. This is episode 11, and we have joining us tonight, in a little while, we'll bring them up, two special guests. We're going to bring back Quincy Franklin, known as the BC Preacher. Now, Quincy was on location at this debacle, this town hall, last Saturday, the 22nd of February, and he saw everything firsthand. You can go to his social media platforms on Rumble and YouTube and others under the BC Preacher or Quincy Franklin to see some of his coverage. And we also have another special guest, a dear friend of mine, a mentor, a man that lived a lifetime of law and order down in Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Captain Mike Bauer, captain of the Special Enforcement Bureau. We're going to bring him up and get his opinion and some of his commentary on what he saw. But it is true, this week has been unlike anything that I have seen in Kootenai County politics in my entire life, and I've lived in this region for my entirety, almost 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, you were looking at an old Yellow Pages that put the two communities. The two communities got the same Yellow Pages book.
For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, my name again is Dan Wilson, and I ran as an independent sheriff candidate against the current Kootenai County Sheriff, Robert Bob Norris, who was an incumbent Republican. I was not successful, but I made it my mission to continue to take the fight to Bob Norris and his handler, DC Special Deputy County Commissioner Bruce Matari, and to keep uncovering what these clowns are doing right here in the county. And I have warned people for well over a year through Instagram, through Facebook, through our YouTube weekly live town halls about the crap that Bob Norris does. And I think crap is extremely watered down.
Yeah.
Bob Norris has been bad news, and I have been sounding the alarms on him since day one. Now, I originally saw Bob Norris acting as sheriff for the first time at a town hall in 2022, and I was so appalled by his behavior. I looked at my wife right then and there, and having been a lawman for myself for 12 years, I told her, I said, look, if this is the sheriff of Kootenai County, we're going to have to replace this guy. And if nobody else will stand up, I will, because he should be nowhere near the office of the sheriff. And I've continued this mission to point out all of the deficiencies of the self-proclaimed professional lawman, 30 years, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, serving and ending his law enforcement career under the most corrupt administration in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which is the Baca and Tanaka era. And Bob exited out just as Baca and Tanaka were being indicted on federal charges for their handling of inmates at the jail. Anyway, all that to say is that I have been on the record for well over a year talking about all of the problems of Bob, including one of the key things that has been a major concern of mine, and that is his emotional stability. And I have talked frequently about his crying episodes where he will cry when he's giving just a general talk to the constituents in a town hall right here in Cooney County. It's been captured on local legacy media. It's been captured in town halls on citizens' phones, but the guy breaks down and cries. And I want to know how a 30-year law enforcement professional, a hardened, supposedly, individual that worked under the Homeland Security Division at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, handling assets, like he said, like the CIA, the FBI, U.S. attorneys, how a man like that could frequently cry over extremely mundane things. I've been concerned about his emotional state and his frequent blowups at constituents. And this week we saw him violate my belief. And I say that he violated a citizen's civil rights at a political town hall. And we're going to dive into this debacle. But first, I do want to bring in Quincy Franklin. And Quincy, you were there on Saturday. You came in right before the ruckus started. What was the general atmosphere of the room before the protesters started complaining and voicing their outrage?
Well, like I said the other night, I wasn't there from the beginning. I got there probably, if it started at 12:30, I probably got there right around 1 o'clock. But when I walked in, there was a legislator speaking. I don't know who it was. But you did hear people in the crowd either in approval or disapproval, not loud eruptions or not loud applauses, but you just heard, little chatter here and there. So the feel in the room, for me, it seemed pretty normal. It was pretty calm for the most part. In about 5 minutes after I was there is when this situation took place.
Yeah. Okay. So you weren't seeing necessarily one section of the crowd of the auditorium doing anything that would be considered disruptive when you got there?
No, not really. No.
So here are some of the timelines that we have been able to put together for those of you who aren't certain exactly what took place. We had a Republican town hall, legislative town hall, right here in Kootenai County in the Coeur d'Alene High School. Now, Kootenai County is an extremely conservative Republican area. Idaho obviously is a very Republican state. And so I understand why those that are not Republicans might be upset with the country right now and the way things are going. That kind of comes hand in glove with political differences, right? And
Correct.
So when we were looking at the way things went down, we know that this town hall was advertised, and we may have a picture of that we can throw up in a while, but this program was advertised to the public as a legislative town hall to come and talk with your legislators and to find out what's going on, put on by the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. So this event started around 12:30, and sometime about an hour into the program, or half hour, 45 minutes, things started to get a little bit disruptive.
A little
dicey. But let's go back just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. We know that there was a credible threat against one of the representatives, Jordan Redmond, one individual that was living in the adjacent county, from my understanding, threatened Representative Redmond with a bomb threat. It's my understanding that the Coeur d'Alene Police and or Kootenai County Sheriff's Office was able to contact this male on Saturday. They didn't have enough at that time, I understand, to arrest him, but they were able to get a warrant and to serve that warrant at his house. So we know that there was a credible threat against the representative. We also know from his own words just a few days ago that Representative Redmond disclosed that the legislators were told right before the event that there was going to be disruptors present. And if we got that video, I don't know if you can pull that one up for Representative Redmond. We're going to let him tell us in his own words exactly what they knew and when they knew it.
Explain to me real quick, I mean, we've all seen the news about what happened here, but from your perspective, what was your takeaway from what happened at this event?
I think that it was clearly orchestrated, right? I mean, there was probably, 40, 50 people there that clearly had a mission. And I was told before the fact too, that like, hey, there's going to be this group that's going to try to disrupt, and the thing is, in a town hall, submit your questions. We want to answer the question.
Okay. So he said that they were told that there was going to be a disruption.
Interesting.
So my question before we start playing the next videos in sequence is, if you know that there's going to be some kind of disruption by the opposition, I think they said what, 40, 30 to 40,
30 to 40.
30 to
That's
40.
a big number.
That's a sizable number.
Yep.
Why would you not have proper security and or law enforcement presence right there, waiting to just make certain that the event maintains law and order? We're going to go ahead and play videos showing kind of the different angles of the protests that started the disruption, and we're going to break it down. I want to warn those that are watching that we are not blurping out, muting any of the foul language that is used. So if anybody is sensitive to the F-bomb being dropped rigorously, you will probably want to exit the room or have those individuals exit. We're going to play, again, these videos that were taken at the same time from multiple angles, and then we're going to discuss, along with Quincy and Captain Mike Bauer, retired Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, what transpired. So let's go ahead and start playing one of these videos first, and we'll go through it.
Ever since the Roe versus Wade, so doctors are protected against having to be forced to do abortions.
All right, hold on one moment here. Okay, again, you folks who are just popping off with stupid remarks, you're not taking into account the people sitting next to you. There's a bunch of people that came here to hear them. There's an opportunity for you to sound off, but not right now. And because you're not smart enough to know that, you're just crazy people. And what we're doing right now is just pausing while we escort.
Okay, I'm going to put this on pause real quick. So Quincy, you were there. One of the legislators began to speak. A couple people voiced out loud their dissatisfaction, kind of heckled. I don't know what you want to call that. But you pretty much, from what we saw in the video, it sounds like it was unanimous throughout the entire auditorium where these eruptions were taking place, not just concentrated in one section of the auditorium. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, there was people in the bleachers or upper section. There were some people over by me. In fact, I think before that lady said anything, there was a gentleman to my right, which you can see in my video. He got escorted out first, but I think he said something even before she did.
Okay. But there was more than two disruptors.
Yeah, there was more than two. I mean, people had signs, and even just watching this again and reflecting them, the MC himself seems like he's instigating a lot.
Yeah, we're gonna dive into that a little more, because you're exactly right. Now, there was about 500 people in attendance, I've been told.
Yeah, it was packed. It was packed out.
Packed in the auditorium there again at the Coeur d'Alene High School. So yeah, you hear as some of the folks start getting rowdy, saying things that are out of turn, if you will. We've all been to these political events, and it happens.
Yeah.
But you hear something that you don't often hear, and that is the MC, Ed Bajarana. And he starts heckling back, and I would argue and say, instead of de-escalating, he's inciting the crowd, the opposition.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. I mean, it definitely sounds like he was adding fuel. And I mean, I've done it before myself. You know, I'm guilty of it too, but at least I claim it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely was adding fuel to. I'm not going to say it was a hostile situation there at that point, but it obviously became hostile.
Yeah. And I think we have a comment up here right now by Christopher. I agree. You can't call names and badmouth people just because you're in the one, because you're the one with the microphone. And I want to say, just to be clear to everyone, because I've been criticized all week long with supposedly condoning the protesters and the way they conducted themselves. I am not. But I equally condemn anybody from whatever side of the aisle or argument you are disrupting any of our what should be a civil discourse, our events. Get your time and place and ask your questions. And I know that part of the frustration we were told is that you can only submit questions in writing and people weren't able to address their legislators. We're going to talk about that more, but let's go ahead and keep rolling that video to see how it unfolded, where the event went sideways.
Or be arrested.
So, you know, folks, when our nation began, there was some really
You're going to arrest her?
No, I'm not recognizing you.
What would you like to do?
So, yes, we're going to get to him. We're going to get to him. I promise. We'll get plenty of chances.
This is not a negotiation.
But, you know, the problem is the folks... Oh, look.
I'm telling you to leave.
Look at that. Oh, he's showing how intelligent he is with all the 5 words that he's asking. This was the mission. They came here to disrupt so that the citizens can't hear. The reality is there's a whole bunch of great things that are happening. The problem is we got a bunch of rabble-rousers who just won't allow it to be spoken. So, you know, the thing is, what I'm doing up here is I'm simply over-talking you because your voice is meaningless right now. And we're just taking care of the rabble-rousers. And eventually what's going to happen is everything's going to settle down and we'll get back to hearing the legislators. Because really, you didn't come here to listen to me. I just happen to have a nice loud voice and a big microphone. And I can talk over all of you. And I can just talk for on and on and on. And look at this little girl is afraid to leave. She spoke up, and now she doesn't want to suffer the consequences. Isn't that the problem that we're struggling with so many of the kids today?
I'm going to pause this. Little girl. He demeans this woman, who is later identified as Dr. Borenpol. She is known in the area as being in opposition to the KCRCC and the Republicans. I know that there was an event, as I understand, at the North Idaho College where I believe she pulled a fire alarm to cause disruption. May have that slightly wrong, but in other words, this is a lady who does like to let her voice of opposition be heard. But what you hear is an MC who loves to hear himself talk, and he's berating. And I'm absolutely shocked. They call him a master of ceremonies. He definitely did not have a master of anything other than hearing his own voice.
Well, you know, another thing I noticed that was interesting, and I'm thinking about this coming from a regular citizen in the auditorium point of view, is that Norris looks toward the stage and he goes like this.
Yeah, like shut everything down.
Shut everything down. So I'm thinking, like, what gave him the power if he wasn't on duty to make that call?
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that in a little more detail as well. But we're going to go ahead and finish this view, and then we're going to go to some of our other angles. But I want you next to pay attention to the commands that Bob Norris is or is not making to this person and whether or not those are lawful. So let's go ahead and take a look.
And then not struggle with the consequences. That is shameful. I think what we've got right now is a situation where these folks are trying to filibuster and shut this whole program down. Unfortunately, they're being successful. So all of you who came here to hear the legislators, I applaud you for sitting there and quietly listening. I promise we will get back to you. In the meantime, we've just got to be a little aggressive with some of these folks here.
I will call the
Look here. Oh, no, I should be removed. I should be allowed to cry and yell and scream. I should be able to allow to interrupt.
All right, let's stop this real quick here.
Yeah, that mocking voice was pretty out there.
You know,
I mean, some of those nuances you don't get until you re-listen to that and hear it from different angles because the audio's a bit different. But I mean, he went into a full-on parody mocking.
Well, he's a voice actor from Los Angeles.
Well, he put on a show.
and you know, I've had it's embarrassing actually to listen back and hear him.
It is.
It's
embarrassing
worse
every time. You listen back.
As a conservative, I do not condone any of this behavior. I think it's absolutely unacceptable. It's childish. It's somebody that wants to bloviate and puff themselves up. We have another video of Ed Bajarana and his love for Sheriff Bob Norris. I have a little bit of history with Ed, and Ed, you know, is a big fan of Bob. But we had this town hall back when I was running for sheriff last year. 4 candidates. I was the only candidate to show up. Not only did Ed cut my time and didn't allow me to answer all the questions submitted, he made certain that the only questions submitted were those, or the majority of those, were ones that were accusation type of non-sheriff questions, right? The typical opposition. And that was after he pulled me aside and told me, hey, you can only talk about what you're going to do. Don't talk about your opponent. And then proceeded to ask me all questions about my opponent. So we're going to play Ed and his love for the greatest sheriff of all times.
Bob is the best sheriff, I think, any county in America could have. Just a dynamite individual. He's brought some energy to our community and our county that I don't think any other county gets to experience.
He's brought some energy to our community and our county that I don't think any other county gets to experience.
So that is your MC who was inciting that crowd, mocking them, not respecting them. Again, the last I checked, all of those people on the stage, those state representatives, are not the KCRCC exclusive representatives, are they? They are everybody in the county, their representatives. And as such, I believe that he disrespected those representatives that were sitting there by his actions and conduct. Now, we're going to bring in Captain Bauer here in just a second. We're going to go ahead and watch a couple other videos. We're going to recap this last one. Some heckling started all over in the auditorium, and yet Sheriff Bob Norris set his sights immediately on a certain individual, went up and told her that she had to leave. She refused. He puts his hands on her, threatens arrest, puts his hands on her, and then directs security to take her out of the building. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of the next views that we have.
So, you know, folks, when our nation began, there was some really, really contentious times. No, I'm not recognizing you. So, yes, we're going to get to him. We're going to get to him. I promise. We'll give him plenty of chances. But, you know, the problem is the folks... Oh, look at that. Oh, he's showing how intelligent he is with all of his fine words that he's asking. This was the mission that came here to disrupt so that the citizens can't hear. The reality is there's a whole bunch of great things that are happening. The problem is we got a bunch of rabble-rousers who just won't allow it to be spoken. So, you know, the thing is, what I'm doing up here is I'm simply over-talking you because your voice is meaningless right now.
Your voice is meaningless.
talk over all of you. And I can just talk for on and on and on. And look at this. This little girl is afraid to leave. She spoke up, and now she doesn't want to suffer the consequences. Isn't that the problem that we're struggling with so many of the kids today? Is they want to behave poorly and then not struggle with the consequences. That is shameful. I think what we've got right now is a situation where these folks are trying to filibuster and shut this whole program down. Unfortunately, they're being successful. To all of you who came here to hear the legislators, I applaud you for sitting there and quietly listening. I promise we will get back to them. In the meantime, we've just got to be a little aggressive with some of these folks here.
We got to be a little aggressive.
Oh, no, I shouldn't be removed. I should be allowed to cry and yell.
We got to be a little aggressive with some of you. Who's we?
Good point.
Who's we? We're going to go ahead and keep playing this. Bring in Captain Bauer here.
Well, I should be able to allow you to interrupt.
Yo, Quincy, take a step to your right.
You out there! So how about that Doge team? Oh my goodness. Elon Musk. It is too bad that we have some 150-year-old Social Security recipients who are going to lose their paychecks. So I do feel a little bit bad about that. But, the reality of the situation is we know this government has been mismanaging money for decades.
Okay.
Did he say you are going to jail? Is that what he said? It sounded like it. He
said that to it sounded like to the gentleman that is yet has not been identified. It looked like that I'm not certain what he exactly did, but the disabled sheriff was ready to go hands on and to run him out when he couldn't get Dr. Bornpole out of her seat. So remember that he goes up there and he tells her that she has to get out or she's going to be arrested. He sits there and tells her several times to leave. And then he goes and he puts his hands on her twice. And he's not effective in being able to get her out of her seat. And then he backs up and gives the unmarked private security team members and orders them under the color of law to go in and take her. But at no time did I ever hear the words, "You are under arrest." So let's go ahead and bring on Captain Bauer. We'll get your views on some of this. Captain Bauer, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you, Dan. And Donna, thank you very much. And Quincy, again, thank you for your input on this. I want to approach this with what I think it is you're doing here, and that's a debriefing of a high-risk situation. And that was the world I came from, was we would very often be involved in what was a law enforcement problem, and we'd have to do a debriefing to find out what went right and what went wrong. But the first thing you have to figure out in a debriefing was who was in charge, who's the incident commander. And in this situation, there might have been, and I heard there was a written security operations plan, but I'm not clear who the incident commander was, because in the follow-up, Brent Reagan is saying it was Sheriff Norris. Sheriff Norris was trying to pin it on Brent Reagan. Both of them are trying to pin it on the private security manager from California, whose specialty, I guess, is raiding marijuana patches, not being involved in political meetings. And so when I look at this, I try to affix who's in charge. And if Bob Norris intended by his follow-up and his behavior at that meeting to say he wasn't he's wrong because it was obvious from the tapes that he was in charge. The sheriff was in charge. So the sheriff was not acting like he was off duty at a political event. He was directing the activity, and his actions assisted Ed in basically ruining the mood of the crowd, destroying the morale of the losers of the 2024 election, trying to enhance and celebrate the victory of the winners of the 2024 election, which was that half of the crowd who cheered when Dr. Borenpol was drug out of there. It was a pretty disgusting display of poor winning and poor losing on both sides. The poor losers tried to disrupt, and the very poor winners tried to ridicule the losers and effectively bully them. And Ed didn't do a good job of simmering it down.
And I'm going to bring back this this understanding that we have from Representative Redmond. They all knew that there was going to be a disruption. And so, and you know, from having planned events, and I've done it myself when I was working private security, you're exactly right. You have a plan of action. And what I find curious is, as we had talked with Mark Stewart, who's a KCRCC elected PC and was sitting on the legislative committee until they removed him for coming on our show to tell us what took place on Saturday. So my understanding from our discussion with Mark is when it was brought up, hey, what are we going to do about, potential protest or security or something like that? I'm paraphrasing, and I may have this slightly off, but he was told, hey, don't worry about it. Sheriff Norris is going to be there. Sheriff Norris is going to take care of it. Now, chief law enforcement officer of the county, but I've seen him at numerous town halls, and he always, I shouldn't say always, but often he's in full uniform or one of the department's uniforms. I didn't see any markings on him that really identified that he was on duty, even though a sheriff is technically on duty 24/7. What do you say, Mike?
Well, I say that he made an arrest of Dr. Borenpol as soon as he put his hands on her. And he let her unarrest herself when he backed away. And then he asked somebody else to finish his arrest. That's not the way it works. If you have legal authority and legal standing to make an arrest, you make the arrest.
Right.
If you don't touch somebody.
Right.
You don't put your hands on them and use force on them, because then it's an illegal arrest and they have the right to resist.
So my question,
so if she had the right to resist, I'm sorry, if she had the right to resist, then she potentially has a defense. Well, they dropped her charges, but she could have used the defense of self-defense when she bit that private person that she didn't have any reason to know who he really was.
Yeah. So I guess the question is did he have a right in his person, an official capacity, to trespass her to begin with? And I want to remind folks, for those of you that don't know, Dr. Borenpol is, again, quite at odds with the Republican Party. She ran for office herself and was not successful. But I have an email that I got out of my own archives from when I was running for sheriff, where I'd been investigating the claim that Bob Norris had been approached by Democratic chairman of the Kootenai County Democrats, Evan Koch, and was questioning, well, hey, Sheriff, if you're going to give resources to Republicans for their auctions, fundraisers, why won't you do the same for us? And in that email, which if we have it, we'll go ahead and place it, in November of 2023, Bob Norris, on his official letterhead, through his official sheriff email, he says, hey, I'm disappointed in one of the attendees, and he names Dr. Teresa Borenpol, for berating him as he walked out of the event. So, I'm looking at the entire audience of people that were popping off, to use Ed Bajarana's phrase. Why did Bob Norris decide that he was going to go after this woman? And then the question is, should a sheriff ever, who represents everybody in the room, not just the Republican Central Committee, is it appropriate for a sheriff in an event like this to rush to shut a lady down that's, again, I don't like the way that she's protesting, but it is a First Amendment issue. Was it appropriate for a sitting sheriff to go in and take the actions that he did? Was it necessary, and was it reasonable?
Was she targeted as a leader of the opposition, political opposition in that room, who was annoying Ed and annoying, no doubt, Brent Reagan with their catcalls and their interruptions? Was she singled out because he knew her in advance? In my preparations to testify, presumably to testify in the Penny Collinson case coming up this year, I came across information that during the Pachyderm meeting, Collinson, Dr. Bornpole, and another third person, I won't name here, but another third person were named by Bob as agitators who needed to be dealt with. And so, yes, I believe in his mind, Bob has developed a habit of targeting people. As I pointed out several times, it seems to be women for some reason. It's not men. I mean, he put his hands on one man there and effectively used force on that man too, but I don't know if he arrested him. He should have arrested him if he put his hands on him and directed his activities. But Bob, in this particular case, seemed to target her because of some past problem. But I can tell you about Dr. Bornpole. Teresa in 2020 supported me for sheriff. Now this gets to my problem with what people say versus what they do. It's what they do you have to pay attention to, not what they say. So here's a situation where Dr. Bornpole backs Mike Bauer for sheriff as an independent. And what happened to her at that event? Now, and you look at the behavior of Brent Reagan, you look at the behavior of Ed, and you look at the behavior of the one-sided opposite of this crowd. And as you pointed out in other episodes, they appear not to be who they say they are. They appear to do things which are not consistent with what they say.
Yeah.
And this is another example of it in this meeting.
Yeah, and I question why the rush. I mean, first of all, Bob Norris has bragged on his campaign website and as well as on his official Kootenai County Sheriff's website that his experience when he was down in California as a lieutenant, that he has incident command experience, that he has experience in protests and all sorts of other events and planning. And yet something as small as this event where, from what we're being told, he was designated as the guy to handle it. At no time did the KCRCC apparently decide to request extra patrol from Coeur d'Alene PD, probably at a cost, because it was they keep saying it's a private event and they're hosting it. Or the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, none of those deputies came. So you had no uniforms inside that auditorium, and you have a sheriff that sort of kind of on duty, but not on duty. He leads the Pledge of Allegiance, and then he's calling the shots. Why would a sheriff get involved with a nonviolent crime? I mean, the woman was heckling. He obviously has singled her out as somebody that he's displeased with, as that email shows, and from what you were just relaying in your dealings. Why would a sheriff, and in your experience, any of the sheriffs that you served under before, would they have taken the actions that Bob did and expedited it without backing up and waiting?
I don't know any manager or leader or a tactical person that I've worked around in my 33 years who would have behaved like this entire operation behaved. It was very loosely controlled. There was a question in just visually in who's in charge. Bob hesitated. Ed continued to run his mouth up there and agitate people, irritate people, got the whole room riled up. I'll tell you what it reminded me of, Dan. It reminded me of January 6th, where you had agitators in the crowd who were intent on making a disruption. And then you had other people who wanted to get the people that they were offending pissed off. And then you had the law enforcement who had no experience shooting pepper balls and tear gas at the crowd to agitate them for no reason. And then all of a sudden you had a levy of violence. And this could have turned into it if, let's say, I honestly, I don't know why it didn't, because Bourne Pole was being drug out of there. And most of the criticism I've seen from people online has been, where were the men to stop this?
Where were our representatives? At no point did any, that I can tell, Quincy, correct me if I'm wrong, did any of those state legislators, before they fled the stage, did any of them stand up and try to invoke some reason and order?
Not that I saw, no. But again, I was focused on the situation. So if they did, I missed it. But I don't recall any of them standing up and saying anything.
And why did the sheriff, as the great, manager that he is, the great soother, why did he not just stop everything? Why didn't he say, hey, you know what? If you guys aren't going to calm down, we're going to shut this down, and we're just going to leave? Or
Absolutely.
why didn't he back up
Absolutely.
and say, okay, we're going to wait until law enforcement arrives, so that they can enforce any action if needed? Why did Bob Norris? It's like he goes code black. I mean, Mike, you and I have worked patrol. You know, guys that have worked patrol that are meat eaters, and the guys that are not very good at that. And what I saw with not only his hesitation, he never said to her, you're being trespassed. He just said, hey, you got to get up and get out of here, or you're going to get arrested. And he starts yelling at her. Then he goes over. He doesn't say you're under arrest. He just immediately grabs her arm and tugs on it twice. Now, how is that not a battery? And then when he threatens to pepper spray her, is that not a crime as well? I mean, at no time did I ever hear him say to her, you are under arrest. What say you, Mike?
Bob doesn't take questioning his authority very well at all. You saw it in the first year he was on the job with the man on the street trying to film an event, and he said, I'm going to pepper spray you if you don't get off the sidewalk. By the way, he started that conversation the same way. I'm the sheriff of Kootenai County, as though that were some sort of a magic solution, and someone's supposed to be impressed with it. That's not how you get respect. You have to have legal standing to do things. Now, Lee White is unhappy because he knew his people should have been in there, and they should have gone up to Bourne Pole and said, okay, you've been trespassed, you have to go. And then it would have been the city's problem. In the city, a private event in the city, if she was trespassed, she'd been arrested and taken in if she didn't leave. But she would have been trespassed and asked to leave, and would have, just like as though she were causing a disturbance in the Walmart. It is the same situation. You're trespassed, you have to leave. It doesn't mean you're under arrest. It means you have to leave and you're not coming back. And if you then don't do that, then you have other problems. And I think that Lee had those two people out. Lee White had those two people out in the lobby waiting to see what is going on in there until this woman is drug out to be interrogated by them and arrested for biting somebody.
So I know that Bob decides that he's going to go hands-on, and he did a horrible job. He obviously, his techniques are horrible. He couldn't affect the seizure of her, the detainment. And so he backs up, and then he gets his phone out, and he starts ordering the two unidentified security guys in plain clothes. You can tell through the videos that they didn't really want to go hands-on with anybody. I don't know what their arrangement was, but I don't think it was that they were going to act as a proxy for the sheriff to arrest a woman, and they ended up also horrible techniques. I did the job. I don't think that they were very well trained by what I observed. There's a tug of war going on. Nobody bothered to clear the benches to either side to make an extraction the way it should. Tactically, it sucked. She kept asking as they were seizing her, and we'll watch this in a second, who are you? Are these your deputies? No response. I don't ever hear any of the guards identifying themselves as security. They don't identify as deputies. They grab her and she's on the ground, obviously not wanting to be taken from her seat, but they end up buying her with zip ties and not handcuffs, which is odd to me. I mean, usually we see zip ties in bigger events where we're expecting a lot of people detained, right? Otherwise, normally we get the cuffs out and we cuff somebody if we have to. But I also saw that there was reports that they had hogtied her, which is obviously not an acceptable restraint in this day in law enforcement. So let's go ahead and watch a little more of the videos, and we're going to see another angle of Bob here, which is probably going to show the best, I believe, of the perspective of Dr. Borenpol and her interactions with Bob.
Nation began. There was some really
Get this all on film.
No, I'm not recognizing you.
What would you like to do?
So yes, we're going to get to
Is
it.
this your
We're gonna get to
is this
it.
your
I promise.
jurisdiction?
We'll give
Yes,
them
it is.
Plenty of chance.
This is not a negotiation.
But, you know, the problem
You've been asked to leave.
is the
Let's
folks.
I haven't been asked to leave by him.
I'm telling you to leave.
Look at that.
This is the town hall.
He's showing how intelligent he is.
You too.
With all of
Leaving
the
also.
fun
Let's go.
words
Come on.
he's asking. This mission, they came here to disrupt so that the citizens can't hear. The reality is there's a whole bunch of great things that are happening. The problem is we got a bunch of rabble-rousers who just won't allow it to be spoken. So, you know, the thing is...
My name is Robert Norris. I'm the sheriff of this county. We're asking you to leave on video. Please get up or be escorted out.
And we're just taking
Escorted
care of
out?
the rabble-rousers.
Let's go.
And eventually what's going to happen is everything's going to
Please don't touch me. Please don't touch me. Please don't touch me.
Let's go.
You're going to be escorted out.
I just happen to have a nice loud voice.
Please don't touch
me.
Microphone.
You're going to
And I
be
can
removed
talk
also.
over all of you. And I can really, I
Please
can
don't touch
just
me.
talk for on
Okay,
and
I'm
on
asking
and on.
you to
And
go.
look at
Bob,
this.
you know
This
this
want
is a
pepper
very-
spray?
You know this is a
afraid.
very
Let's
bad
go.
idea.
She
You
spoke
know
up.
this is
I'm
a
letting us
very
leave.
Doesn't
bad
want to
idea.
suffer the
Come on,
consequences.
let's go.
You know this is
That
a very
the
bad
problem
idea.
that we're struggling with so many of the kids today is they want to behave poorly and then not struggle with the consequences. That is shameful. I think what we've got right now is a situation
Who are you?
where
Who are you?
folks
Who the
trying to
fuck are you?
and shove this
Who
program
are
down.
you?
Unfortunately,
Let me
we're
see your
being
badge.
successful.
Where's your badge?
To all of you
Who the
came
fuck
here
are you?
To hear the legislators, I applaud you for sitting there.
Who is this? Who is this?
I
No,
promise
don't
we'll
you fucking
get
touch me,
back
dude.
to
Don't touch her. You're on film and you're not a sheriff. You're not a sheriff. If you touch me again, I will call the police, who are actually in charge here. Who is this guy?
Come on,
Stop
let's
it.
go.
Stop it.
Let's
Get
go.
the fuck away from me.
Don't touch her.
This isn't a sheriff. Excuse me, Sheriff Norris. This gentleman is assaulting me. This man is assaulting me.
Now, let's go.
This man is assaulting me.
Wow.
Sad.
Sheriff goes hands on, and again he says, "Hey, you're going to be asked to leave." And no time does he say you're being trespassed. You must get out right now. None of that. He goes hands on with her. Can't affect anything. Tactics are horrible. Then he motions, grabs his phone, grabs those two unidentifiable undercover.
First, I want to point out that before he grabs the other guys to motion them in, Teresa is saying Bob Norris has Teresa's arm.
Yeah.
And she said, "Bob, you know this is a very bad idea."
Yes.
And she said it twice. She called him by his first name.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed to indicate some personalization there, and she's the one telling him this is a very bad idea.
Yeah. So
then
I think. Go ahead.
Let me add also, he told one of the guys to actually start filming, and then he addresses his name to her and says, "I'm the sheriff."
And
then
I'm
he grabs
filming
the
this.
phone. And then he grabs
Yeah.
and then he grabs the phone when he backs up. He grabs the phone from that security guy, and then he starts holding the phone and filming.
How much in control does he look when he's there directing two guys that are not deputies, they're presumed not to be law enforcement, and he's screaming, "You out now! You out now!" Is that dignified? I mean, it's blowing my mind. The behavior of the chief law enforcement officer of the county.
It's our favorite part.
Let's go ahead and finish watching this, and then Mike Bauer, we're gonna get more comment from you.
Okay.
Is this your deputy? Is this your deputy? No, don't fucking touch us. Is he a deputy? These are deputies. Who the fuck are these men? Who the fuck are you? Hey, that's over the kill. Let's go. If you hurt me, who are these guys? Who the fuck are these guys? Who the fuck are these guys? You are hurting them. You're hurting her.
We know that government has been mismanaging.
You are not deputy. Who are these guys? Who are you? Who are these guys? Who are you? Who the fuck are these guys? Show your badge.
Ma'am,
Who the fuck
just
are you?
cooperate. It'll be 100 times better.
Yeah, that's what they say to rape victims, you fucking piece
Just
of shit.
cooperate.
You refuse to identify yourselves. Who are you? Who are you?
To come here today. And I applaud them for doing so. Thank you for coming. But the problem is this. They didn't come here to listen. They came here to interrupt. Isn't that what Elon is exposing in Washington, D.C.? Don't we have that same type of disruption?
Okay. They eventually take her and drag her out of the auditorium, and they place her in a corridor outside where Coeur d'Alene PD eventually arrives. There was that other man that you saw Bob Norris manhandling that was also detained for quite a while in the corridor. But I'm going to go back. We're going to take a call here pretty quick. At what point?
Yeah, I'll let you get to that, but we are inviting phone calls. The number to the studio is 208-366-4671. Again, that's 208-366-4671. When you get through, we'll put you on hold, so just hang tight.
At what point did the woman, Dr. Borenpaul, have the legal right to resist when two men who have not identified themselves start manhandling her? She asks whether or not they're deputies, whether they're police, whether they're Bob's deputies. At no time have I heard that she's under arrest. So was she justified in her response of resisting and of the eventual bite of one of those agents' thumbs? Mike Bauer.
If this happened in California, I'd say she had a right to resist. I'm not sure about Idaho. I'm not sure what Idaho law is on false arrest. I'm not sure if there's a self-defense feature in false arrest that allows you to use any amount of force to stop the false arrest. And so, one thing I want to point out, and you've seen it in the background, look at the looks on the face of the attendees of this event of shock, repulsion, not wanting to be there. And you can say, why would you want to create that situation? And I'm going to tell you this. I was at Cataldo. I watched Cataldo. It was the same sort of behavior and the same sort of shocking behavior and the same look on the faces of the men and women at Cataldo that you saw in this event. And it's caused by what appears to be to them irrational violence by somebody that is supposed to be law enforcement to protect us.
Now, Mike, can you briefly explain what you mean by Cataldo? We've got a lot of new viewers on tonight, so not everybody's going to know the history on that, but just briefly let us know what you're referring to in that situation.
Sure. There was a Republican candidate forum for sheriff and for commissioners at Cataldo, April 24th, 2024. And it was at Fred Scheffelmeyer's big barn bed and breakfast in Cataldo out there. It was a beautiful place. And in that event, I was running against Bob Norris in the primary as Republicans. And so it was he and I as sheriff's candidates, and then all of the commissioners were there except Everline and Duncan. Those two did not show up. And when Bob got up to give his presentation, he, for some reason, chose Penny Collinson to attack and made a number of statements to her. I won't repeat them here, but a number of statements that she's suing over. And what I'm trying to point out is that that the reaction of the audience in that event was shock and just not wanting to be there. We didn't come here for this.
Yeah.
We didn't come here to see this. This is not what we expect to see when we go to a political event. And so that's why I make that comparison.
All right. Do we have any calls, Holden? They dropped off. Okay.
No, I was just wanting to invite that. I'll give the number again. I want to open that up because we kind of got into deeper discussion here. So if you do have a question or comment that you'd like to ask us live, that number again is 208-366-4671. 208-366-4671, and we'll put you in the queue.
So eventually, the Coeur d'Alene police shows up. They had 2 units that were ironically out in the parking lot as more of protection, if you will, of Representative Redmond. They didn't know that they were going to be called or needed inside. There was no communication from what we've been told or have read from the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, Chief White, that there was going to be a need for any additional support. So they were caught unaware of it. We have an interesting police report that we're going to read here in just a second. But Quincy, anything else you want to add real quick before we start moving on to the aftermath of this arrest / detainment?
Not really. I mean, I think you've covered a lot. I'd like to ask Mike, with his knowledge that he has, was there something? Was it deemable was she breaking the law? I guess, in other words, was she doing something that was legally wrong? I know you're not a lawyer, so I don't know how far you can go with that, but from your experience, was she breaking any sort of law?
I'm going to have to refer to the City of Coeur d'Alene Police Chief Lee White, and the city prosecutor of the City of Coeur d'Alene decided that she did not do anything wrong, and they dropped the charges against her. And I'm not going to second guess that.
We're going to go ahead and bring up slide 1, and we're going to go over that police report. I think it's page 2 of our first slide. We'll bring it up here. So the Coeur d'Alene Police Department report for the primary officer. We're going to go through we'll start on page 3. Okay. The case summary: Teresa Borenpole was attending the Kootenai County Legislative Town Hall at Coeur d'Alene High School, became overly disruptive to the point Kootenai County Sheriff's Officer Sheriff Norris requested her to leave multiple times. She refused to the point she tried to hold out or onto her chair. And let's see, another female to prevent security's ability to escort her out of the auditorium. I'm going to blow this up since my eyes are getting old. She refused to the point she tried to hold on to her chair, and another female to prevent security's ability to escort her out of the auditorium. Security was eventually able to remove her from the chair. She continued to fight them. In the process, she bit the right thumb area of a security guard, Christopher Berg. He wished to pursue charges against her. Notice in that Norris wanted her to leave, but she never says that Norris placed her, Borenpole, under arrest. Narrative: on February 22nd, 25, approximately 13:28 hours, that's 1:28 for those of you that don't do military, myself and Officer Cohen were in the parking lot on an unrelated call when dispatch informed me they received a call from inside the high school where the Kootenai County Legislative Town Hall was taking place. The notes indicated there was a disturbance inside, and it was getting pretty aggressive. Officer Cohen and I walked up to the hallway outside of the auditorium. There was a massive amount of people in the hallway, and it was extremely noisy with lots of yelling. People were yelling a female was getting assaulted. I initially walked into the auditorium, but was approached by a security guard identified as Paul Troet, who is, by the way, the operator of Lear Security. He told me that he had someone out in the hallway. Paul said the female was trespassed. And again, I never heard anything indicating that she was verbally told she was trespassed. And he and Sheriff Norris arrested her. He told me she had been asked to leave due to her disruptive behavior, and when asked to leave, became uncooperative, combative, and refused to leave. They also told me to be careful with the female as she was a biter. I observed the female sitting on the ground next to two males wearing tactical green pants and black shirts. One was holding her down by her shoulders, but eventually stopped. There was a large crowd gathering around her. Numerous people were filming the interactions and trying to talk to her. There was another male in zip tie handcuffs up against the wall with another security officer. For several moments, the hallway was very chaotic. The crowd began to grow as people left the auditorium as we were in the direct path to get to the exit doors, and others began to close their distance on us. A large amount of people. Going to the next page. Can you
let me know what page you're on?
Yeah, I'm on page number 5 now.
I'm lost. All right.
We're in close proximity to Officer Cohen and I. As tensions began to subside, these people began to leave the immediate area. I'm going to jump around a little bit. Sheriff Norris. Now, this is, again, an officer that is reporting on what she experienced and observed and what was told to her secondhand of the event taking place, and then, of course, what she experienced when she was there. Sheriff Norris told me there was a female in the crowd that became very disruptive and was interrupting the forum taking place. Sheriff Norris approached the female, who he knew as Teresa, and asked her to leave. She refused. He asked her numerous times to leave and continued to refuse. He then demanded her to leave. When she went, he had the security team come in and physically remove her from the auditorium. A struggle with Teresa took place between the security team as they tried to remove her. Initially, Sheriff Norris wanted her trespassed and removed. So did Norris ever actually make the arrest himself verbally, or was it implied? I mean, we don't know. He spoke with a security guard that was initially holding Teresa down in the hall. Goes on to talk that he could see a small red spot on the size of a pea where the guard was bit. It's about the size of a pea, didn't break skin. She didn't clamp down all the way enough to break skin. Jumping on, there were other noisy people there. Suddenly, people who she did not know began to scream at her. This is Dr. Borenpol talking about why she refused to leave. She claimed she had no idea who these people were, and they were dressed in all black. She asked the people who they were, and they would not identify himself. They began to assault her. She said they grabbed her by the arms, wrist, and at some point grabbed her hair. They placed her on the ground, and at one point, and then removed her from the auditorium. Sheriff Norris was filming the situation. I advised her of her Miranda rights, and she agreed to speak with me. She admitted to biting the security officer in the hand. She did not tell me why she refused to leave the auditorium when asked, but stated that she did not know who was talking to her, and they would not identify themselves. I was shown the video taken by Jesse Jones. In the video, Teresa is approached by Sheriff Norris and asked to leave. He grabs her arm to escort her out. She refuses. He tells her numerous times to leave. She continues to resist his commands. He will not move from her seat. Sheriff Norris motions for his security team to come in and remove her. And they eventually do. So she says,
the caller on hold, if you can hear me, just hang on because we'll get to you next.
Sheriff Norris's security team. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, who do we got on the line?
Are you there? You're live.
Yeah, this is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Mike Marquardt.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, I just had a question. One of the things that, I have felt after watching this entire thing is that they absolutely had a right to remove her. It was just the fact that they didn't have uniformed officers there, and that's the part that I'm a bit confused on now. It's seeming like it's going in a direction where, people are saying that her rights were violated, but they stated in the very, very beginning of the meeting that there were to be no outbursts, and she had 6, 7? So that's the part that I'm really wondering about. I don't know if Mike Bauer can interject or if you can interject, but it seems to me that they had a right to be asking her to leave. It's just the fact that it was done improperly. There weren't informed officers to take that role.
Yeah, hang on just a second, Mike. Great question. Hang on, don't go away. But that question is also coming from a viewer on Instagram saying, are there ground rules that were announced or typically announced before a town hall meeting? And they're asking that for clarity. So even though we may feel that we've established that, I think that's a good point.
Mike Bauer.
Well, I think this is going to be a point of an argument with the $300,000 that Dr. Borenpol has raised so far for legal fees. I think that this is going to be discussed in that case, or in any litigation that comes about. But I would say that the argument that Borenpol exceeded her First Amendment rights is countered by the argument that Ed personally provoked her as a member of the losers of the election, who had no right to be, expressing their frustration. Anybody could have predicted that this close to the national election, that these two opposing parties probably should not be together in the same room. There's a number of ways to handle these forums. There was nothing wrong with doing a Zoom forum with the legislators and handling it that way. And I think that I think it was inadvisable once they saw that this was going to be a disruptive event and it was going to lead to violence. Once violence was crossed, this event should have been stopped. It could have been paused for 30 minutes. The room could have been vacated and then bring them back in. Anything could have been happened, but they should have stopped that event. If I were the incident commander of that, my solution to it would be to apologize to the crowd and say, we're really sorry, but this is not going to work. And we don't want this to lead to violence, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. And so we're going to stop this. And the legislators, at the worst case, this will be rescheduled. That would have been a way to defuse it at the time and not have to deal with what we're dealing with now. I got a phone call from somebody who said, in Los Angeles, who said, I read this in the New York Times this morning. I can't believe that this is what Idaho is bringing to the rest of the country through its law enforcement. And it didn't have to happen. That's my view.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad when it hits Inside Edition. That made that today. Mike Marquardt, thanks for that question. If anybody else question or comment you'd like to bring live onto the air, the number is 208-366-4671.
And I'll go back to what I believe should have happened. I've been asked for several days what I would have done different. And I think the very first thing that I would have done is I would have established there was a threat of disruption. A threat doesn't just have to be guns and knives in physical nature like that, but disruption is definitely part of that threat matrix. And there should have been, as if Bob was the guy, as we've been reported, tapped with the responsibility as a member of the KCRCC, as the Republican sheriff, to come in and oversee the security of that event. We still don't know who it was that paid or got the Lear Asset Management to come in and volunteer their time, but there should have been uniforms in there, period, to set the tone. And I just, for the life of me, cannot understand why you would teeter on that fine edge of sort of identifiable. Are you on duty? Aren't you on duty? You are the chief law enforcement officer of the county, but you also are a figurehead. While you have the right to take action, should you take action, especially when it comes to a First Amendment issue? Or is the proper response to calm everything down, to lower the temperature, and to really avoid somebody that you have already gone on the record having a problem with? Would it not have been more prudent and wise of a emotionally stable sheriff to say, I don't have to show off for my KCRCC buddies and tell them how big, bad, and tough I am, but I'm going to tell the woman that she needs to be quiet. We're going to call law enforcement. We're going to have law enforcement show up since we weren't smart enough to bring law enforcement there or identifiable security. Lowered the temperature, made absolute certain, as Captain Bauer said, if we can't control it, we shut it down. There are consequences. Who looks bad then? But you err as a sheriff. And I'm not saying the same thing as a deputy or as a police officer who are there as a uninterested party just to enforce calmness. But I never would jump in and at all try to seize on somebody's First Amendment rights. I do not understand the debacle. Once Bob Norris made that decision to go down that road and he was committed, he looks like an absolute fool. He may, at a point, have been golden, but as you said, he hesitated. He never told her she's under arrest. He never told her she was trespassed. He got other non-law enforcement to seize her and make the arrest. And as Chief White eventually, released in his press release or his statements to the press, that they dropped the charges. So if they dropped the charges, they were never solid to begin with.
Well, Chief White and the city prosecutor were the final say on this, and that's going to have a big impact on how this goes forward. I'm not sure how the publicity is going to calm down, because this GoFundMe, it just is racing along, at least 30,000 a day, and I don't know when that'll stop. And if she starts a lawsuit, I'm not sure who she's going to sue. I hope she doesn't sue the school district. She may potentially sue the KCRCC or the sheriff or the county. I don't know how this is going to shake out, because it depends on who the incident commander was, and I just don't know. I know who it looked like.
Right? It's you. No, it's you. It's you. It's you. We've heard that Reagan didn't know who the security was, but then he said he did. Norris said he didn't know who the security was, and yet we do know that Norris knows Paul. They've been at events together. We know that the KCRCC is, they're bragging right now. We were the ones that rented this venue for this private event. And how did they get away with now trying to turn a blind eye and say, we were there, we were running this whole thing, but none of it's our fault. It's not our fault that we didn't have proper security or law enforcement. I mean, it's not like they're broke, that they can't afford to pay extra duty for deputies or police officers. And then to watch the debacle, they get volunteer security. Why did they have volunteer security? And then why did that security team fail protocol and by city law to be identifiable? I mean, I don't understand how they can come back in and double down. It seems so hypocritical to me that they act the way that they do. And they had a golden opportunity for years. We were labeled up in North Idaho as part of the Aryan Nations, even though that was a small percentage of Hayden, and eventually we got rid of them. Here we have a president that is Republican after 4 years of the Biden administration in a predominantly Republican area. That people are going to be upset. That as Trump is doing his work across the country and upsetting a lot of people, that those that oppose Republicans and their policies are going to be looking for their moment to get the next Aryan Nation label on North Idaho. Why were they behind the curve? Action beats reaction every time. Why would they not anticipate an event like this and completely short circuit it by doing just the opposite?
Well, we talked about whether or not this should be a partisan legislative forum or whether it should be a nonpartisan legislative forum. And I think in the future, until everything simmers down, I don't see how you can have a partisan legislative forum. The legislature is supposed to represent the Democrats and the Republicans. It's supposed to be neutral once they're in office. And they follow their own, obviously, philosophical guidance, but they represent the Democrats too. And
then this begs the question, should we be holding town halls by the dominant party, hosted by the dominant party, in buildings that are churches, or, you know, in this case, it's the school? Or should our legislators, those that are coming to give the town halls opportunity to the people that they represent, Republican, Democrat, Independent, and hold it at a state building and or a county building, and they bear the cost of that rather than the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee?
Well, it almost looked like it was some sort of partisan advertising event for KCRCC, and also to congratulate themselves on being the sole party in power in the county. So, I've saw this over the last 5 years when I ran for sheriff and then clerk. There's a lot of bad blood between these two parties, and it hasn't gotten any better. And the national election did not soften it up at all. And so now it has to get worse until it gets better, because the legal fallout from this is going to be kind of painful for some people.
Yeah, because I mean, you have some rumored big attorneys, big litigating attorneys from the last I heard, Seattle, possibly, that's going to step up to the plate to represent her. She's raised, I think you just said, over $300,000. I'm being told by folks around the country that this will be tens of millions in civil rights lawsuit filed against the KCRCC, against Bob Norris, against the county, and most likely against the security team. We're going to find out before long what the courts have to say about, what the attorneys have to say. I mean, we're speculating right now, but at the end of the day, it doesn't look good when you have the city of Coeur d'Alene deciding to drop all the charges for Dr. Bornpole.
I have to say that I have a lot more respect for Lee White for finally coming out of the shadows after 5 years and actually doing something meaningful to try to get his arms around what's going on here. You know, in the last two elections, he's been pretty quiet. He's in the middle of a Democrat administration with the city and the resort, and it's tough. He's not. He hasn't been out in any leadership role in the county like he had to be in this case. He had to step up. I'm glad he stepped up. And this is a case where, I mean, I don't want to see litigation go on forever. We don't need the publicity here. But this kind of behavior of trying to bully the minority, when you saw it in elections 70-30, you know, what's the point of bullying them? What's the point of bullying them in public? And you antagonize these people, and then they act the way they act, and then we're forced to react, and we're caught in a machine we create as Republicans to try to congratulate ourselves on our success at their expense, and it's rude, and it's not necessary. Ed should have never taunted that crowd. Never. Yeah. It was just irresponsible. But I wouldn't say Ed is responsible for what Bob did, but Ed may have been responsible for the way the crowd reacted.
Yeah. We're going to take a break here real quick and play a message from our sponsor, Stella Stogies. And then after the spot on Stella's, we're going to go ahead and we're going to come back and we're going to kind of wrap things up. And if people have questions, either submitted online or through the phone, we're going to try to get through those. So tight. We will be right back. Maybe.
Yeah, we had.
Well, our sponsor is Stella Cigars Stella Cigars. I'm gonna mess this up.
Yeah.
Stella Cigars out of Spirit Lake, Idaho, off Main Street.
I'm gonna get the file here in a second.
They are a great cigar shop. I found them about a year or so ago. I love to go there. In fact, I've got a one of their gift baskets that they have made up for me. And I can tell you that Brad and Lisa run a great store. You're going to find a variety of cigars that will fit your palate, whether you're into Maduros, like my favorite, the Foundations, or the Stallones. In fact, I think we've got their video right now. Let's see it.
To light up that cigar, Stella's Stogies is your one-stop shop for all things cigars. Located on historic Main Street in Spirit Lake, Stella's Stogies believes that there's nothing quite like enjoying a good cigar with friends. That's why they're there to help you pick the perfect cigar. Stella's has a great selection of cigars, cigar accessories, and information about cigars, making it easy for you to find just what you're looking for. Owners Brad and Lisa are passionate about cigars and are committed to providing you with the best possible cigar shopping experience. They believe that a good cigar is a great way to relax and socialize, and they're excited to share their love of cigars with you. Stella's also does pop-up shops for events, so be sure to ask them about that. Mention that you heard about Stella's Stogies on the Liberty Without Compromise live stream and get 10% off your purchase. Learn more at stellasstogies.com.
And right after this show, I will be debriefing with Mrs. Wilson with a stick that I got from them today.
Yeah.
It's a Wiseman by Foundation. So do we have our other advertisement ready to go?
Well, I don't know that we had anything ready to go. I didn't have a commercial ready to go, but Dan and I, we are really careful about taking care of our physical fitness, and what comes with that is working really hard to eat correctly. That's typically a high protein, lower carbohydrate diet. So between the two of us, we've probably tried every protein bar known to man. And I mean, I have things I'm picky about. I don't really like the replacement sugars because they leave a gross aftertaste, but you'll kind of deal with what you got. Dan gets picky about taste. He has his favorites, things he'll tolerate. Well, we then found midday squares. And this is something that he and I now, I'm going to let you hold that up to.
It looks like it's open. Did somebody already try to take a bite of our new box?
Oh, there you are. Yeah, I almost, it's not going to autofocus on that. But it's not going to autofocus on that. But you can hold it up closer to yourself. But these are delicious. So when we're down to the last one, we always fight over that one.
You always get it.
I know, he always gives it to me. But you can click on the link that should be pinned to the top of the comments. That's going to give you 15% off when you place an order on those midday squares. They've got about 6 or 7 different flavors, and they're all amazing. So yeah, that's midday squares.
We've been talking about the debacle at the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee Legislative Town Hall that occurred Saturday, February 22nd. We have been discussing with on-site firsthand witness Quincy Franklin, the BC preacher, and we've also brought in Captain Mike Bauer, retired from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We're talking about whether or not this was a true violation of Dr. Bornpole, the agitator, the disruptor of the event, her civil rights, what the future may hold for her. We, again, do not condone any disruption of any event. We're here to respectfully listen to anybody and everybody. But I do want to point out that the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee has a short-term memory issue when it comes to those disruptions and laying hands on people at their events that they don't bother to call out. We have a clip here we're going to play of City of Coeur d'Alene Councilman Dan Gookin, part of the KCRCC, who was at a Republican women's event And we'll go ahead and see what that looks like.
Just
here.
if you can cue that one up,
Yeah.
just before Dan plays that, I want to remind you, we are taking questions live. If you feel like your voice has been stifled, you're in the minority or you're in the majority, you want to do something other than a comment in a comment section, you have your opportunity now to call into the program. It's 208-366-4671. We'll put you on hold and then we'll put you in.
Now, you're going to have to help me on this because I have not done this part yet.
Oh, okay.
You just now today gave me controls for the first time.
Yeah, I just put him in control and it's a lot. Okay, so this is the Dan Gukin clip. Yeah. Okay.
And if you people don't, you will give me my time. You told Christians not to vote for me. You judged me by my faith. You will not.
No. Give him his time. Give him his time.
Thank you for the YouTube moment. That was Terry Seymour, who took away my right of speech right here, a member of this committee who refused to condemn race.
So you have Terry Seymour, who is part of the KCRCC. I believe last I heard she was part of the vetting committee for candidates.
Yeah.
And also a employee or volunteer. She works in Representative Russ Fulcher, Congressman Fulcher's office. So I haven't heard much to do about that. I mean, that was an assault. You grab somebody's arm and yank forcefully a microphone from them. But I guess if it's Republican on Republican, we have a different standard. The point is, it should never be acceptable, period. So,
well, somebody was having a discussion back and forth online today with somebody saying, "Oh, that's an exaggeration. I wouldn't go so far as to call that assault." But as you and I have discussed it, that it absolutely fits the definition of assault.
Yeah,
and I know Mike Bauer, Mike Bauer's still here to chime in on that if he so chooses.
Yeah. We still have Quincy too.
And Quincy too. Yep.
As a patrol officer, I would have written that up and I'd have given it to the detectives for review and they would have given it to the district attorney for a rejection. But at least it would have been documented that in order to make the point, don't do that to people.
And here's my takeaway point in this whole thing. Was what happened on Saturday unacceptable for the amount of disruption that took place? Absolutely. Be perfectly crystal clear. However, equally, the performance and the behavior of Ed Bajarana and that of Sheriff Robert Bob Norris was so egregious, unacceptable, how it rolled out, that I take exception with the KCRCC and Republicans in general not being able to come back in and police themselves to call out when they do something wrong, when they don't do something right, admit it and move on. I don't understand this. We're going to double and triple down. And I mean, for example, Mark Stewart, who I met after the campaign of 2024. I met him afterwards. He was a newly elected North Idaho Republican precinct committee man and sits on the board of the KCRCC. Just because he came and spoke firsthand what happened on Saturday, his reward was his committee said, you don't have a right to free expression, to free speech. You're now off because how dare you talk to Dan Wilson, because everybody knows that the KCRCC for the majority hates Dan Wilson, even though I'm as conservative, if not more conservative in my worldview than most of them are. However, because they have doubled and tripled down on Bob Norris, who we told them last fall was a problem and was going to cost them bigly, to use a Trumpism. I mean, here they are taking one of their elected members. He was elected by the people in his community, in his neighborhood, and now they're going to punish him because, they don't want free speech when it comes to one of their members talking to somebody like me because I'm dirt. Quincy, you've had a couple dealings. Yeah, go ahead, Captain.
I'd just like to say it again, like I said before. Look at what they do, not what they say. And that's and that'll tell you who somebody is. What they did to him was wrong. he reaches out, tries to make a reasonable argument and give some dialogue from his point of view, and he's punished by his own peers, which just creates this authoritarian aspect of the Brett Reagan administration. And Norris is a function of that, and Norris tried to honor that and honor Brett Reagan's authoritarianism, and we'll see whether that stands. I'm not sure it's going to stand after this.
Be careful calling him authoritarian, because I think he's suing Dan Gookin right now for making, allegations that upset Brent.
I've dealt with Brent at the water rights hearings in this county in 2013 and 2014. He will turn his back on you and walk away. Okay, the man has not the courtesy to even appreciate who supports him. And let me say this: I am more conservative than 99% of the Republicans in this county. Have more guns and ammo than they do. I have more right-wing views than they do. And they treat me like, let me just say it, like a Democrat. Okay? Yeah. That's a problem here. It is a club. It's been a club since I got started trying to run for sheriff. I ran for sheriff because I made the statement in public. I did not believe that Bob Norris was honest in his resume. I believe he exaggerated. I believe that Bob Norris was not fit to be the sheriff based on the experience as I knew him from Los Angeles. And when I did that, I became Dan Wilson, an outcast. I was rejected by my own party, and I'm more Republican than 99% of my party. So what do they do? Not what do they say?
And, Brent Reagan is whining. The KCRCC is whining because since the event, poor, pitiful KCRCC, they've been threatened. Bad things have been said about them. And they had their monthly get together last night. I think it was down at the county court, county building. I forget the name of it, but our county building in Coeur d'Alene. And they wanted Chief White to provide them personal security. I mean, they expected him for a private organization. Like they've been saying, hey, we're a private organization. People weren't allowed to come here and be disruptive because it was our event. And then they want the chief of police to provide police protection. But my question is, and you and I know this, Mike, from law enforcement days, if somebody needs extra protection for an event that's out of the ordinary from patrol or other functions, there's a cost to that, right, for overtime. But what would these same Republicans think if the Pride group, Pride in the Park, decided, hey, we're going to have an event down here and we're worried about the right-wingers, the Patriot riders, the Panhandle Patriots, the motorcycle club and the other 2A people to come down. So we expect you to provide us at no cost police protection down there. You know darn good and well the KCRCC would lose their mind. Quincy Franklin.
Yeah, they would. They would definitely lose their mind. But a lot of this reminds me of, they started attacking you, Dan. When you were running, they started attacking you. They were saying all sorts of things about you, pulling up your past, talking about things like this. And this was the Republican Party, and here you are, a Republican, and they were trying to deem you as a Democrat, an outsider, because you were running against Norris. And so they started attacking you, but yet, and they've done it to me, they've done it to Casey, they've done it to independent journalists here, but yet when the left does it, they cry victim, boo-hoo, they start whining. And that's what you see what's going on. And you have two different groups here with a bunch of emotions involved in it.
Yeah.
Now, there was a question from a Facebook viewer that says, Dan, do you think it was the wrong decision to run as an independent rather than a Republican? Many Republicans will only vote for Republicans. That fits the current discussion.
Well, I think that had I run as a Republican, knowing what I know now, I would have never obviously made it past the primary. And it's my belief belief that the KCRCC are kingmakers because they have the money. Now, look, a local party can raise unlimited amounts through their PACs and their associations. In this case, if you ever look at the balance sheet of the Central Committee, I mean, it's pretty substantial. Whereas as candidates, I mean, you know, we are limited to $1,000 max per individual. So in order to try to overcome, which I think should be illegal, I wish they would somehow challenge this in court, the KCRCC picking their recommendations, putting them on their mailer, and I've heard it's $80,000 to send it out to, you know, the entire county. It works in this county. They can, in essence, in my belief, choose their candidates because it's a Republican county predominantly, 90%, and then, you know, there is no, if the Central Committee says this is our guy, people are lazy. They're just going to go down and go, here's our mailer. I don't have to look anybody up. And yeah, I'll mark the R. And that was what I saw was coming. Folks like Terry Seymour and Nina Beasley, who were supposed to be on the vetting committee, were coming to my events and actively working against me, attempting to be disruptive. And so I saw the writing on the walls. And what I said was, look, you're not going to get rid of me that quickly. And you know, I ran for another 6 months after the primary as an independent to take the fight to Bob Norris, Briz Matari, and some of those in the KCRCC that need to be challenged. So yes, you're right. In this county, unfortunately, too many people, despite the fact of what the numbers we were getting on our website in the county and the advertisement demographics and the numbers that we were getting back. Donna can talk a little more about that. Our message was getting out, but unfortunately, yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, a Republican seems to be the only person that can win in this county for now.
Speaking of disruptive,
go ahead.
Speaking of disruptive, you mentioned a few names there, Dan. Was there any sort of disruption when you were speaking in front of groups and people? Was anybody disrupting you? I recall some people were.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when they would disrupt, if you will, it was, again, my experience, it was the Republican Central Committee members.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a sitting county commissioner who happened to be the campaign manager of the sheriff that you're running against, and he shows up to one of your, you know, meet and greets where I'm supposed to be able to talk to the people and brings a police report in an attempt to assassinate me there and using his power and authority. You know, I had better respect from people outside of the KCRCC than I did while I was in it. Now, that's not to say I still have friends that are in the KCRCC. They're good people. But unfortunately, this cult, this tribe, is all about party over principle. And I want to bring up one more point here. I understand what it is to be a conservative because I've been one my entire life. I've studied the history of this country. I understand how we got our beginning. I understand how we were able to gain our independence. I studied the founders. I understand that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution are an integral part of our form of government, and the Declaration cannot be divorced from the Constitution like progressives want. I understand what it means to be a Republican, and yet we have people that have fled up here, and I have many friends that are from California, so I'm not meaning to upset people, but I'm going to call it the way I see it. You have a lot of people that were used to oppression and big party republicanism down in California, and they move up here, especially after COVID, and they see the tyranny, and all of a sudden they jump on the bandwagon, and they let the talking heads educate them, like Hannity, like Fox. And there is no real foundation to understand exactly what the framers had in mind and what true limited government looks like. And so you have a lot of people out there that are running around MAGA, 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 MAGA. And they don't even understand. How many of these guys can even quote Hamilton or Madison out of the Federalist Papers? Anyway, so yeah. Republicans, police yourself.
Mike Bauer.
Okay. And do you remember the sheriff's election in 2020? Everybody that was around at that time, a lot of people came right after that, but there was Whitehead, there was myself, there was Green. I was it 7 candidates ran for sheriff, right, in 2020. Wolfinger was leaving, and he didn't endorse anybody. So the KCRCC didn't endorse anybody. They didn't endorse it in the primary. They let the primary run, and I ran against the primary winner, Bob Norris. And my point is, that is the last time the KCRCC did not endorse in a primary. When I filed for clerk right after that, within days of losing that election, I filed for clerk because I wanted to go in and look at the vote count. I want to go see what's going on in this county. Immediately, they passed a rule. The state allowed the local, our central committee, to pass a rule that they could endorse in a primary. Now, effectively, that decision and its effect, which you just experienced, could not withstand the scrutiny of a lawsuit that it is prejudicial, that it excludes everybody else except that one candidate in a primary, and that's not the purpose of a primary. And the number of southern counties addressed this issue and actually publicly said, what you're doing in Kootenai County, Brent Reagan, is un-American. Okay, now, I use that in my campaign literature on the short-lived and I guess you'd have to say a pathetic campaign I ran for clerk, because my opponent was endorsed by KCRCC and it went 80-20 instead of 70-20. So, I fail to see, with that sort of control over the number of Republicans and the way the system is designed in this county to control, where's the paranoia? Where is the need to actually stomp on your opponents in meetings, insult them, and basically try to ride them hard when you know you're going to beat them anyway in this county? So there's no need to be a sore winner. There's no need to be a rude winner or a indecent winner.
Let's go ahead and take a call.
Experienced them.
Okay, we're going to take a call. You are on with Liberty Without Compromise. Let us know who you are. Question, comment. We're ready for you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for hanging out. My name is Casey Whalen. I appreciate the platform and what you're doing, and I do think Dan Wilson is a much better choice than Bob Norris for sure, after this whole fiasco. But I just want to correct the record, stating that the people that are in the program get carte blanche, act to the police all the time. And in 2022, during the Queen Dance Party on Coeur d'Alene in the park, which was hosted by the North Idaho Alliance, Sarah Lynch, there were all the police there. They were allowed to face the stage when the Drag Queen Dance Party was happening. Kids were giving dollar bills or money to these performers on stage. It was extremely disgusting to see this, let alone being there to and later being subpoenaed in the lawsuit issued by Eric Posey against Summer Bushnell, who lost that lawsuit. But suffice to say that, there's a select group of people that get carte blanche access to law enforcement, and it's not conservatives. And so one of the major issues here is that the council are extremely biased. Even after the fact of this whole thing happening with this whole, that whole was a mess. But it was there to disrupt the meeting. This is a national movement to disrupt conservative gatherings, which will come to light and is coming to light. So she was in the wrong for acting in that way in public, but she shouldn't have been handled in that manner. So I just want to say that it's extremely disingenuous by the city of Coeur d'Alene act like happening when many of the conservatives, and I don't really necessarily consider myself a conservative, I'm not any particular party, but I've been seeing this going on for years, and I'm sick and tired of it. And I would definitely recommend Dan Wilson, next sheriff of Kootenai County.
Well, thank you, Casey, for that. Thanks for correcting the record. I don't know firsthand, so I'll take you at your word. The bottom line is law enforcement should not be making any special considerations for any group. Equal protection under the law. I've said this for well over a year, and I mean it. We have to take responsibility for ourselves and our own security. That sometimes means that you have to pay for extra duty in law enforcement. But thanks for correcting that. And I agree with a lot of what you had to say, Casey. So appreciate that. Final words, Quincy.
I just think that we need to do better. We can't sit here and complain about the left and the Democrats and all of them and that they're acting crazy if we are acting and doing the same sort of behavior. I've been saying it recently, and I'll say it right now. It's appearing, and it looks like it's the same bird, just two different wings.
Great. I really appreciate you dropping in with us tonight. Please give my best to your family, and we'll look forward to bringing you on again sooner than later. Captain Mike Bauer, final words.
I'd like to encourage the Board of County Commissioners, as presently constituted, to get their arms around this situation and provide some leadership in getting it resolved peacefully and inexpensively as possible. I don't think that the previous BOCC, as constituted, contributed much to keeping this sort of stuff under control. And I think they could do it now. I would recommend that they take a good hard look at it.
Great. Captain Bauer, as always, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for coming on tonight and giving us your vast experience. You were, of course, captain in the Special Enforcement Bureau, which is the VIP, the who's who in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. You also oversaw their air unit. Very qualified man. So God bless you, sir. Please give my best to your wife, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
You know, folks, I'll sum it up like this. My belief as sheriff is that you represent everybody. If you're a Republican, you are still there to protect everybody's rights as found in the Bill of Rights, which includes your right to free speech. And let's all face it, we've been at many of these events on the right and the left. We've seen disruption by the right and by the left. It's never acceptable. But as a whole, we generally, unless it's like a congressional hearing, we attempt to give extra leniency to those that are expressing themselves, because you never know where that crossroad is. And it's always better to err, in my opinion. And this is what I would have done as sheriff. I would have erred in backing up, slowing it down, attempting to be the peacemaker for both the Democrats that I represent as sheriff and also the Republicans that I represent as sheriff and all of the independents that I represent as sheriff. I would have done my due diligence by recognizing the threat that was there and had the appropriate law enforcement presence. I would have, the minute I heard the MC inciting the crowd, I would have immediately told him to please stop. But I, as sheriff, would have never in this event ever have gone and put hands on to a woman who I had already publicly had a beef with. I wouldn't do it. I would err on the side of not violating somebody's rights. And look, folks, you're going to fight me all day long about law and order, law and order, law and order. Oh, I'm a man of law and order. Believe me, the rule of law is supreme. But we're not talking about murders going on. We're not talking about active shooters. We're not talking about active assaults. And we did not descend from fearful men. We descended from men who understood the times. And they dedicated their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And when they adopted the Bill of Rights, and they guaranteed the government must protect these rights, They knew that there were going to be those that did not align with their values, that they were at complete odds with. And for the record, I am a Christian. My worldview is Christian. I am extremely conservative in my worldview, but I am so conservative. I am such a supporter of the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment that I would make certain that everybody that disagrees with me within the constraints of the law is equally protected, because that is what a constitutional sheriff is. And while I was maligned for many, many months as being this hardcore right-wing dude that was going to mess everything up, in fact, I was told over and over again publicly by Sheriff Bob Norris that I was such an amateur that the county could not afford the civil rights lawsuits and violations that would occur if a man like me were sheriff. And now we find ourselves a year later with the current sheriff in a lawsuit along with Kootenai County for violating a woman and what he said to her and using the county resources to further bully her. And most likely in this latest incident where he went code black, you could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his actions. He was not able to affect any control once he determined that he had to control the situation. You saw that he wasn't able to do it. And he made a fool of himself, and he made a fool out of that organization. They were waiting for that moment. Your opposition Republicans were waiting for that moment. And you guys, because of your arrogance and because of your egos, you allowed it to happen. You could have been the peacemakers. You could have stopped everything and said, you know what? We don't appreciate you disrupting our organization. Let's let all the cameras show what the opposition does when they don't get their own way. Or you could have gone a step further as a peace offering. Said, fine, you guys feel like you're not getting heard right now? We'll give you an extra 10 minutes because Republicans, we can be compassionate. We don't agree with you, but we'll give you that extra leeway to be able to say that we gave you the ability to have a discussion with your representatives. And shame on the legislators that sat up there on that stage, and not a one of them, unless I'm wrong, but as far as I can tell right now, not a one of them bothered to try to lower the temperature of that room. Republicans, do better. You guys now have a mess. The courts are going to be fighting this out for a long time. We have no idea how much it's going to cost the KCRCC. Will it cost Brent Reagan? Will it cost Lear Security? Will it cost the county? Will it cost Sheriff Robert Norris? What we do know is that Dr. Bornpole right now has raised over $300,000, and media from all over the country's eyes are focused on North Idaho. Way to go, Bob Norris. Way to go to put us on the map to now make us into that very thing that the left was attempting to paint us as. You fell right into their trap. Bravo. Any final words, Donna?
Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. There are a lot of you that are just discovering Dan due to this recent debacle. And I know that he welcomes you here because the message, there was the course of a campaign and an election that obviously didn't turn out the way we were moving toward, charging toward the goal that we had in mind for Dan to be successful in that bid for Kootenai County Sheriff in 2024. But that message has not changed. Yeah. Dan has spent a year calling out the corruption of Bob Norris.
And dysfunction.
And corruption, dysfunction. Yeah. And predicted the future in a lot of ways with this situation. It was something that he was cautioning about. So, yeah, I mean, those are final words. We hope to see you guys back here next Wednesday live at 7 p.m. We will be taking your questions, calls, and comments.
Yeah, this was a little bit of a different flavor.
It was. And, I figured out a couple of things. We're expanding in our online software situation.
You're doing an awesome job.
Our image is mirrored backwards. We got some little things to work out. So we thank you guys for hanging with us. Thank you to our sponsors, Stella's Stogies. They're in Spirit Lake on Main Street. Stop in there. And then also our affiliate with Midday Squares, 15% off these delicious. It is a functional chocolate bar. This is a peanut butter flavor, but they have multiple flavors. They're all delicious. The link for 15% off those Midday Squares is in the comments pinned to the top.
Now.
And, you've got to now. I've got to thank you for joining us tonight on the Liberty Without Compromise broadcast. You can visit our website to watch past episodes and view exclusive reports on the Kootenai County political power players, and that's at libertywithoutcompromise.com.
Now remember, I want you all to remain strong and of good courage. Go do the right thing, make a difference, and may God bless you all. See you next week. God bless.